So recording has started. Sometimes you want to display a list. You want to display a list. We have different types of. We have two major types of lists. We have the ordered list and unordered list. Ordered lists are the ones that are numbered. Unordered lists are not numbered. So let's say I want to display a list of beverages. So you can have OL. OL stands for ordered lists. OL. Then inside this now we can have different items. So each of the lists will be LI. So I can have T, I can have milk. So we have tea, we have milk. Let's add another one. We have coffee. So this OL stands for ordered list, and inside this list inside this OL we have 3 items. We have tea, which is a list, we have milk, which is another list, and we have coffee, which is another list. So let's run it on the browser so that we can see the result. Can we see this 1, 2, 3? This 1, 2, 3 is because of the OL, order list. Order list is going to number it. It's going to number it. On ordered list, we just use sign like dots. So how will we create an unordered list? Unordered list is UL. UL stands for unordered list. So UL stands for unordered list. Let's say I want to display, maybe I want to list names. So I can say Taye, Kinde, let's say Ido. So this is unordered list. Look at the difference between the two of them. We are going to run it on the browser now so that we can see the difference. So can we see it? Taye, Kinde, Ido. So this is unordered list. This is ordered list. This is an ordered list. When you get to CSS, you'll be able to change this. You can style it and change this from 1 to 3 to other things, maybe to the Roman numeral, so that's going to be I. And you can change this also to something else, maybe to start to other things. So when you get to CSS, you'll be able to do all of that. But I hope you understand how ordered lists and unordered lists work. We use them to list items. So ordered lists, we put them in in numbers, like numeric formats. On ordered lists, we just use sign like this. When you get to CSS, you'll be able to use ABC if you wish to. Probably you don't want to use 1, 2, 3. You want to use ABC. You can also use that. So that's about ordered lists and unordered lists. Let's go to another tag. Any question before we leave this list? Any question? Okay, let's proceed. Let's go to form. The form tag. No, I think in our last two classes, we did input, and I explained to us then that input can be a text. The type can be a text. It can be a number. It can be a color. It can be a date and a lot of format. Now input can take much more than this. Let's return it back to text. We have something called placeholder, and I will say first name. Look at how this placeholder is going to be. Whatever you put here will be a placeholder of this input. This is how placeholder is going to be. Let's run it on the browser. Do you notice this shadow, first name, like that seems to be at the background of this input? It's not a text, it's just at the background. Immediately I start typing inside that input, that text will disappear. It's a placeholder. I think okay, I think the recent Nigeria politics, we like at least it's bring the word placeholder closer to us. It makes it closer to us. Just there for the meantime. So this is a placeholder. It's not the real text we want to. So just for the user to know that something, this is what we want the first name. So when you start typing, the placeholder will disappear. Let's look at another thing we can use with input. Instead of placeholder, we can use something called value. Look at the difference between value. Placeholder is not a real text, meaning that immediately I start typing, the placeholder will disappear. Unlike value, value is a real text. Let's see how value works. This first name is within this input. In fact, before I type any other thing, I need to clear this first name. Let's refresh again. This first name is there. If I start typing immediately, you will see that it's adding it with the text first name. That's the difference between value and placeholder. A value is an actual text. A placeholder is just making us to know what should be there, and it will just be there like a shadow for the meantime. Immediately you start typing, it's going to live there. Do we understand what placeholder and what a value does? Any question? Okay, let's proceed.
So, sir,
Yes, sir.
please, I'm suggesting that you little bit slow. You are very fast,
Okay, okay, sorry.
especially in deleting. Thank you,
Sorry,
sir.
sorry. Alright, so let me come again. So, we talked about the list. We said we have two types of lists. We have the ordered list and the unordered list. Ordered list is going to number hits. You use lists to list items. Maybe I want to have a list of names. So each of the name will now be li. So I can have, let's say I have two names. Winning. I have another name, let's say Excel. So we have these two names. Since they are inside OL, which means ordered list, it's going to list these two names in numeric order. So when we refresh the page, we have these results. So the OL stands for ordered lists. Sometimes you don't want to list things using numbers. Maybe you just want to use symbols. So we have the unordered list, which is the UL. I can list maybe furnitures. I can list so we have this. This is unordered lists. Unordered list. So when we run it, you will see that it's not going to be in 1, 2, 3. It will just use a symbol to denote it. So, and when we get to CSS, you can change the symbol from this sign, from these dots, using dots. You can use style. You can just the same way you can use doing in Microsoft Word. You can use symbols. So you can use other symbols aside this when you get to CSS. Then after that, we talked about inputs. And I said the reason for bringing up input again is because we are going to talk about form in the course of this class. So but before we go into form, let's first look at input again. In our last two classes, we discussed the types we can use with inputs. You can have type text, you can have type color, you can have type dates. We looked at some of these types. But aside type, input can take another attribute aside type. So it can take an attribute called placeholder. Placeholder. Whatever you type here inside this placeholder, let's say enter your name. you are saying that this enter your name. You're saying that this enter your name should be the placeholder of this input. It should be the placeholder of this input. And what the placeholder means is just to occupy space for the meantime till when the real item will come. Just stay here, occupy this position for the meantime till when the real thing we want to put there till it comes. So this entire name will be a placeholder for this input, meaning it's going to occupy that place for the meantime, but immediately we start typing, it's going to disappear. It will just be there as a background, like a shadow. It will be there as like a shadow. So let's refresh now, and we see, oh, okay, I think we use this, let me change it to text. So this enter your name is there as a placeholder. Immediately I start typing here now, let's say, type this name. Immediately you start typing, you realize that will disappear. But once it's empty again, the placeholder comes back. But immediately you start typing, it's going to disappear. So that is what a placeholder does, just there for the main time, like a shadow. It's not a real text. Then another one is the value. This value is an actual text. Unlike placeholder, placeholder is not an actual text. Value is an actual text. So this entire name now will be the value of this input, meaning it's going to be inside that input. So this value, and unlike placeholder, it's not going to disappear. If you want to remove it, then you have to intentionally clear it. Any question? Any question? Okay, let's proceed if there's no question. Sometimes you want to collect a lot of inputs together, many inputs together. So we call that a form. Just the same way, if you want to, let's say you are carrying out a survey. Let's say you are doing a survey. Then you're going to give me a form to fill. Most times we give out form during surveys, and in that form you're going to get a lot of information from the user. So you are not getting just one information, you are getting a lot of information from the user. Maybe you are getting the user's first name, maybe the user's last name, the user's phone number, the user's age, and things like that. So instead of just giving us different inputs, you can put all these inputs in a form. That is, you create something called a form tag. You create a form tag. So let's maybe remove this for now. This form is like your normal form. Like I'm talking about our day-to-day, hard copy of form. Let me explain this part. This part is used, in fact, it was actually introduced to mimic our hard copy form, our manual way of doing things, just to mimic that. In a form, you will have different fields. In a form, we have different fields. Those fields are known as inputs. So inside this form, we will have different fields. So let's put different inputs there. So we can say, let's get an input. We can say this will be the first name. So we can use a placeholder. First name. We can have another field again. Then we can give it a placeholder, and we can say here we are expecting the last name. Then let's say we have an input, and let's say this input type dates. So here we are expecting the person's date of birth. So we can say DOB. So all of this now will now be a single form. When we get to the browser, well, we may not see any significant difference aside that we have three inputs. This is the first name, this is the last name, and this is the date of birth. But we are doing something that is not too cool. When you are using inputs, you want to add something we call label. You add labels to input, and I will tell you why we are adding label. Instead of doing this, hello everyone. Can we still hear me?
Yes.
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 Yes, sir.
Hope you are
Yes, we
getting
are
it.
hearing you.
Any question? Any questions so far? Okay. Let's look at something together. The essence of this placeholder is for the user to know what to fill in here. So that the user will know that this place should contain the first name. And so that the user will know that this place should contain the last name. Meaning that I can remove this placeholder and put it here. Are we still going to have the same results? Like the user will now know that first name should be here. Then we can come here and say, so do this like this. So the user will know that first name should be here, last name should be here, then date of birth should be here. Why this is fine, we are not considering the visually impaired people. It's not cool. When you are building application, when you are building a website, you need to consider those that are visually impaired. I may not be able to see the content of your page, but instead they are using screen reader to use your page. You need to consider those people that are using screen reader to read your page. So all we've been doing so far, we've not considered the visually impaired people. So let's consider them now. Instead of writing this like this, we are going to introduce something we call label. So we say label. We say label for. We now say first name. So I remove this first name. Again, we bring in another label. Say label for last name, and remove this last name. Then we come here again and bring in another label again. We say label for, you can say D, and let's say date of birth DOB. Then let's discuss what this means. And let's put everything on the same line so our code is neat. So we have this label for first name. Whenever it sees this, instantly it's going to do something like this. I'm coming. What this means is this label is for this input called first name. The label and the ID, they must be the same. Like this first name here must also be the first name here. What this means is this: the user will see people that are reading your page now. We see whatever you put here. People that we see this text, but those people that are using screen reader will read this part. I hope you understand it. People that can read your page will see the text here. But people that are using screen reader will read. Oh, sorry, please. Winnie, stop making noise. Stop making noise. Don't make noise. Yeah, come here. Come here. Okay, so people that are using screen reader it will read this out to them. But people that are viewing your page directly, will see this. That's the essence of this label. In order to handle the case of those using screen reader and those that are viewing your page, it's very important that you add this label because, like I said, this will allow those that are visually impaired to be able to use our page. Now, what this is now going to do is that it will tell them that there's an input. In fact, when they click on it, instantly it will move the mouse to this input because the ID here is the same as the 4 here so that we'll be able to type inside this input. So it's going to move the once they click on this, it will just move it to this place so that they will be able to type inside this input. Then we have this last name also. Let's do that. We give this an ID. The ID, please note that the ID must be the same. Whatever you put here must also be the ID of this input. So I'll give this an ID and I'll also call it last name. We put last name here. Then we give an ID here too. The ID here will be DOB. Then we can say date of birth. So we can just say let's go. So we have this, So DOB, or we can, okay, let's use underscore instead. What is in first? Date of, something is better. Bet. Date of birth. So this is date of birth, then the ID here is date of birth. Please make sure your ID don't have spaces, it's not a good practice. Instead, if you want to put spaces, you can use underscore or something like this to represent spaces. So let's come again. We have this label. This label is attached to an input. Each label is attached to an input. This text is what your users will see on the page. Let's go to the browser and we see it. So there is no significant difference between what we had initially and what we have now, except this label. And I already explained the meaning of or what this label does. This for part is very important. Whenever anybody using Canada or whenever anybody clicks on this part, instantly it's going to move to this input. So if one is using Canada and this part is clicked on, then can you see it has jumped to the input. If I click on this text last name, instantly it has jumped to this input. So if I click on this date of birth also, it's also jumped to this part. So with that, they'll be able to use your page effectively. Any question before we proceed? Do we understand how the label part works and the form?
I have a question, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of that underscore, can we use dots?
Yes, we can
Date
use
of
dots, but I want us to get used to using underscore. The reason is because in the next stage, when we get to JavaScript, we'll be using this ID a lot, and JavaScript most times is going to frown at using at you for using dots here. First, it's going to frown at you. So that's why I want us to. For now, it's not a big deal. It will work the same way. But when we get to our next stage, we'll be doing JavaScript in our next stage, and we'll be using this ID a lot. So, and if you're already used to using dots here, then you may find it a bit difficult to switch. Like you not start adjusting yourself. I don't know if you understand it. So that's why I want us to get used to using underscore like this instead of using dots. I first used dots, but I changed it to underscore so that we get used to it right at the beginning, so that we won't start adapting the next step. Whatever adaptation we need to do, we have done it at this stage. Any other question? Or are you satisfied with the answer? Any other question? Okay. Let's look at some other things. We are still in form. Now, remember I said all these things here, they are inside this form. There's another input type called input type submits. Input type submit. So let's do that together. So we create label, or we may not even, you can just say input type is submit. Look at the difference between these and others. Another input type. types we've looked at. Can you notice this button? Do you notice this button on the screen? This button will help us submit this form. Immediately I click on this button, it will try to submit this whole form. Note something, if I have another input outside the form, it's not going to submit this. It will only submit all the inputs within this form, not outside the form, and that's why we are putting all these things inside the form. This input I submit, we submit that form immediately. Once we click on it, the form will be submitted. Let's proceed. So the question is, if I'm saying the form will be submitted, the question is to where? Now let's fill this form. Let's say so, and let's just say pick a date, and I click on this. We said the form will be submitted, then to where? As you can see, the form is empty again. What happened is this form has been submitted, and it is empty back, so that we can fill in another set of inputs. So let's address that part. To where is the information in this form going to? Well, at the moment, it's just wasting our inputs. Like, it's not submitting it to anywhere, it's just discarding them. So we are going to come here and add something we call action. This, whatever you put here, will be the URL that your form will be submitted to. So let's say I have a form I have a page called process.php. Because we are using it is PHP. Once you click on this, your form, everything here will be submitted to this page called process.php. Well, at the moment, there's no page called process.php. But the idea is this: once you click on this submit, this whole form will be submitted to this URL, whatever URL you put here. So once you click on this submit, this whole form will be submitted to this URL called process.php. Just that at the moment there is no page called process.php, and that's beyond the scope of this class. Remember, in our very first class, we talked about the front end, we talked about the server side, and we talked about the database. This process.php is the server side, which is beyond the scope of this class. We're going to get there maybe, I think, in stage 4. But the idea is that when you click on this submit, the whole content of this form will be submitted to this page. So let's do that. I will refresh this page now and fill again. And submit. So as you can see, it is submitted. It's like submitting the form to process.php page, but it's saying your file couldn't be accessed. There's no file called process.php, but it attempted to submit the form to process.php. Let's proceed. Then there's another thing that is very important. You see, all we have on the screen is for us, but this page, process.php, doesn't know this input, cannot differentiate this input from this input. What do I mean? When you click on submit, how will process.php know that the user typed first name here? Well, one can say using the ID, but process.php will not use ID. The ID is for, remember, we introduced this ID because of those that are using screen reader. So meaning that whatever the user types here, or whatever the user types here will not be differentiated from each other. Like that is, there's no way the process.php can identify or can differentiate these three inputs. 1, 2, 3. Meaning, you understand what I'm saying now. If I get to understand it, if I put ABC here and I put DEF here and I click on this form submit, once I click on submit, there is no way the process.php will know that what I have, this ABC represents the first name, this DEF represents the last name. It's unable to differentiate them because the essence of the ID is for the screen reader to know that it stands for this label, not for the process.php to know. That is not going to make us introduce another thing we call name. Sorry, another attribute called name. So I can also call it first name. So when you fill this form, whatever you put inside this input will be sent to process.php as first name. When I fill this, whatever you put here will be sent to process.php as last name. And when you fill this, whatever you put here, whatever you type inside this place will be sent to process.php as date of birth. So process.php will now know that, oh, what the user typed here means first name, what the user typed here means last name, what the user typed here stands for date of birth. So let's fill it. Let's fill this form again. And check something at the URL. Check this part at the top here. We now have first name equals to Taiwo, last name equals to Abidakun, date of birth equals to 2022-09-08. So this is how it's going to be submitted to the process.php. So on this page now, on the process.php, the server-side developer, we know how to extract this information. Any question? So that's the essence of this name attribute, is for the server side, back end, to know that whatever you fill inside this input represents the first name, whatever you put here represents the last name, and whatever you put here represents the date of birth. But then there is another issue we need to fix now. Let's fix that together. I will add another label. I'll call it password. So I'll say label for password. Then I'll add an input. The type with the input type password. This will be password. ID will also be password. So that's what happens here. I will fill this form again and submit it. So go back to the browser and fill the form again. So we now have the space for password. Let's fill. So, input type password is not going to display it, so you don't know what I typed here. I'll submit the form. Now, if you go to the top of this page, can you see that the password I typed was actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Meaning that anybody at my back might see what is typed here, which is risky. So whenever you are using input type, or whenever you are using input type password, or whenever you are submitting sensitive information, there's something you need to do, because this is a big security threat to your application. So what do we do so that this will not be displayed here? You go back to your page, go back to your code. Let me close this. Go back to your code and do something. We come here and add another attribute to our form. We call it method. We have different types of methods, but the two most popular ones are get and post. Get and post. The default method is get. That means even if method is not added, the way it is, the method is automatically get. If you are not using any method, the default method is get. But when you use a method, you can change it from get to other things. We have another method called post. This post is not going to display the content of your form on the URL. It's not. It's not. So how will you fill this form again? And I will submit it, and you're going to look at the difference between the two. there, and I will submit. Now it has submitted this, but there's nothing in the URL. That's part of what we use. That's part of what we use get post for. When you use posts, the content will not be in the URL, which is safe. Most times when we are using post, we use post to submit information, and we use get to retrieve information. Since we are submitting information, it's safer to use post instead of using get. When we use get to retrieve, we use post to send out information, to the server. When we get to server-side programming in our stage 4, we're going to see other methods aside this get and post. But for now, we've talked about two methods. Get, post. Get is usually used to retrieve. Post is usually used to send. And post has one security advantage over get. It's not going to display the content of your form in the URL, which makes it safe. Please never submit password or PIN or sensitive information using get. It is risky. Never submit sensitive information using get. The default is get. So whenever you are submitting something like password or PIN or any sensitive information, please change the method to post. Any question? Let's proceed. I want to look at some other things we can use with input. We have autofocus. What autofocus is going to do is, whenever you get to the page, it will automatically focus on this input, this particular one. Let's go back there. So refresh. So as you can see, we have this autofocus on the first name. Once I refresh, it automatically focus on this one. I will remove the autofocus on the first one and I will take it to the second one. Autofocus. So once you refresh the page, it's going to automatically focus on the last name. So autofocus will just shift it and it will focus on that part immediately. So that's autofocus. If you think you need it on your page, you can use autofocus. Then okay, good. We also have the required. Required means that the user must fill it. If the user fails to fill it, it's not going to allow the user to submit that form. It will tell the user that part is required. So what I'm going to do is I will set the first name to required. Meaning that if the first name is not filled, then we won't be able to submit this form. So let's go to the browser and try to submit this form now. So we have this, please fill in this field. And if I fill only the first name, I can submit this form successfully since others are not required. So I'm able to submit the form because I filled the first name. Then let's look at another input type. We're going to look at input type email. So label for email, input type email, name is email, ID is email. So let's look at something here. How we refresh this page. So we have this. I will set the email to required. So we set it to required, meaning that the user must fill the email address before submitting this form. Sorry, someone wants to join the class. So meaning that the user must fill this email address before submitting the form. So I will fill this. This email address, I will just fill ABC. Remember when we looked at input the other day, I said for now, I'm talking about when we looked at it then. I said it then that email we worked as though it was just an ordinary input type text. But you're going to understand the meaning of input type email now. You understand what it means now. So I'll just put ordinary text without putting an email address. And I will try submitting the form. It doesn't allow me. It's not allowing me to submit this form. It won't because it's telling me that what I have here doesn't look like an email address. So I will now change it to an email address. Then I can successfully submit this form. I need to quickly point out something. This does not mean that this email address exists. It may not even exist. But it has the structure. That's the essence of input type email. To ensure that it has the structure of an email address. That doesn't mean that this is a valid email address. In fact, it may not exist. And that's not the work of your front end. It is your server side that will check if an email address exists. But the end of this page, of this input type email, is just to ensure that whatever the user types has the structure, looks like an email address, and that's the work of the input type email. I hope you understand what it does now. I hope you understand what it does now.
Yes.
Okay, let's proceed. So far we've looked at different input types and attributes of inputs. Next is, let's look at another tag. I think we are done with the most important part of input and form. Yeah, I think we are cool with it. So now I believe I can give us any form and we can create forms, we can submit forms, we understand what the ID does, we understand what the label does, we understand what the name does, the type also, we understand every part of form. I believe we do now. Let's have a recap. We have a form. In this form, we have the action. This action is the page we want our form to be submitted to. When we click on this submit, that's the page we want to submit the form to. This method, I said at least for now, we talked about two, the get and the post. And I said whenever you are submitting password or sensitive information, please don't use get, instead use post. But the default method is get, meaning that even if you don't have any method, it automatically be get. But please, once you are submitting sensitive information, don't use get, instead use post. Then we talked about inputs. We have different types. We have text, we have email, we have number, and others. Then we introduced an ID, and I said the ID is to work with the label. We have label for first name, and the ID is also first name. That means this label stands for this input. So when the user clicks on the label, it automatically jumps to this place, and it also allows those using screen reader to use our page very well. Then this first name is what you're going to see. Whatever you put here is what you will see on the screen. But this part, this for, is what screen reader will read out. Then we have the name attribute, and I discussed that the essence of the name attribute is for the server side to know that whatever the user fills inside this input stands for this name. It stands for, in this case, it stands for first name, and in this case, it stands for last name. Required means that this form must be filled before it is submitted. If it is not filled, it's not going to allow us to submit this form. And that's about form. Let's go to other tags.
Hello, sir.
Yes,
Hello, sir. Before you proceed,
okay,
I have two questions.
okay.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Hello. Okay. So, as I said, can we use? Is it possible to put required for all of them, all the input required?
Yes,
Required. Is it can it work like that?
yes, you can.
Okay. And the second question is, if you check the when you run it on the browser, all the forms they are on straight line.
Okay.
What of if we want it to be as normal form, like row one, row two, row three, all those stuff. Is it go to, is it the same method too?
Okay. No, I
And then,
think
have the submit at the base, at the under. So after filling there, row one, row two, row three, then the submit will be at the under. Is it, how do we do it?
okay. Thank you very much. I talked about an inline element and a block element.
Okay.
An inline element is an element that cannot that can share its line. Inline can share. A block element cannot share its line. An input is an inline element, and that's why we're able to have everything on the same line. That's because an input is an inline element by default. But what we can do is we can say break. This layout tag we break it to the next line. You can add it anywhere. You can even add it here if you want to. You can add it maybe somewhere here. Oh, sorry. You can add it maybe somewhere here. But this break just means break to the next line. You can add another BR here. Then we can add another BR here. You can add another BR here. Then add another BR here. So when we get to the browser now, we add this.
Okay, yeah. Yes, this what exactly.
If they look too close up, so you can still add another break. But when you get to CSS, you'll be able to style it better. So yeah, I'm adding two breaks. So we have this.
Exactly.
Alright. So let's look at some other tags. We have another tag called button. The button tag looks like this input type submit. Let's say click me. It looks like input type submit and it allows you to create a button. As you can see, this looks like input type submit that we just used, but it's not an input. This is a button. You may need it on your page. In fact, a lot of websites have it. Let's go to my startup website, and I want to show us a button. This sign up free is a button. It's a button. So when you get to CSS, you'll be able to style it and make it better. Let me see where we have another button on the page. Oh, this is another button. In fact, we don't even need to go far. This Google Meet icon, this stop sharing, is a button. Can we see stop sharing on the page? Can we see it on the screen? Stop sharing.
Yes.
This
Yes.
button. So we use button a lot, and it's good to know how it works, how to create a button. Just create a button tag, and whatever text you want to display, put it here. So that's the input type button. When you get to CSS, you'll be able to style it and make it even more beautiful. Then we also want to look at how to put videos on your page. How to put a video or audio on your page. So let's say I want to display a video. So we're going to create a video tag. Then we create something we call source. Let's answer. Let's say, let me find a video on my system. I don't think I have. I don't know if I have. Yes, I think I should. So
Hello, Mr. Tai.
yes, sir. I'm with you, sir. Hello, I can hear you. Do you want to ask a question?
I'm sorry, I wasn't hearing you before. That's what I mean, but I can
No,
hear
I
you now.
wasn't
I'm
saying
sorry.
anything. I was trying to download a video. While that is going on, let me
Okay.
talk about how to display a video on your page. You create a video tag, like I said earlier. Then you create a source. This source works like your input type image. We looked at image. So whatever the image, that picture is, whatever source it is, I'm currently downloading a short video. Once it's done, I will include it on this page. So you put the URL here, just the same way you linked that, the same way we linked the image. Then you're going to link this video exact way. Then the type, we have different types, but the most popular type is the MP4. So you're going to say video slash MP4. If your own extension, the extension of the video, if it's not MP4, then you check the extension. We have some other extension aside MP4. We have OGG, but note, not you can't display all video on your browser using HTML tag. You can't. Not all video extension is allowed, but MP4 is the most popular one and is allowed everywhere. So most of the videos I guess so. Most of the videos on pages on websites are usually MP4. So check the extension. If it ends with .mp4, just come here and say video slash mp4. If it's not mp4, just check video slash whatever extension it is, if it's allowed. Now, you're going to put the source here. Next is this: you want to set the width and the height. How wide do I want my video to be on the screen? How wide do I want it? So you're going to set the width. How wide do you want it to be? Maybe I want it to be 400 pixels. Then the height. How high do I want it to be? I want it to be this pixel. Other things I would love to use, at least I want to introduce them now until I complete this download so that we can understand this better. Now remember I said you can't display all videos on your page, meaning that there will be some time you will try to display some videos but it's not going to display. So you can come here and just put a text. Your browser does not support cursor. Just put a text. This video. What happens is it will either display this source or display this text. This text is like the ALT tag of your image of IMG. In IMG you will come here and put the ALT when we dealt with image, but in this case there's no ALT. All you just do is add the text here. Once it's unable to display this video, then it will display this text. It will display either of the two, either this video or this text. So if it's unable to display the video, then it will display this text. Your browser does not support this video. So any question on the video tag? My download is almost okay. 25. Once it's done, I will display it on the screen. Again, we also have the audio, which works like the video. To display an audio, just come here and say audio source, then the location of the audio, then type audio slash mp3. Most audios are mp3. Check the extension. If it ends with mp3, just put slash mp3. And if it's unable to display this text, your browser does not support this audio. So we have the video tag, we have the audio tag. So let's run it. I will link it now once my download is done. Any questions so far based on what we've done? Are we enjoying HTML? We're almost rounding off, right? We're almost done with HTML as a whole. We're almost done. So while we are waiting for that, let's talk about some other tags. We're going to be talking about two tags. Number one, we have the div, and number two, we have the span. Let's talk about these two tags, the div and the span. A div, in fact, both of them are actually containers, just that one is a block element container while the other is an inline element container. Who can tell me the meaning of a block element container? Who can tell us the meaning of a block element container?
Yes, let me try.
Okay, sir.
I think the block element container are the one that you cannot, it does not accommodate the the second for that thing you are putting below. It will not be on the same line. It will at least it will, you have to come down as in form of break line.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Do I get it?
Thank you very much. A block element container does not share its line with other elements or other items. A block element container, like you said, a block element
that is share.
container, we occupy its whole line. It's not going to share it with other items. Why an inline element container is going to, it can share its line with other items. So both of them are actually containers, and you can put anything inside these containers. In fact, you're going to be using both of them a lot. You're going to be using them much, in fact, maybe more than other tags that we've learned so far. These two, span and div. This is a div, this is a block element, while this is an inline element. So let's say I want to talk about myself now, like the assignments I gave us in our last class. I can say, look at it. We said we have a section for academic background and we have another section for work experience. What can I do? How can I write this? One option is to do something like this. Let's say I have H1, and inside this I will remove everything on this page for now. Just comment out everything and focus on this part. So I can say H1 composition about myself. Then maybe write some information about myself. Let me just put some line. So this is just some random text about some random text. So next is I want to talk about my academic background. Now instead of just putting this there, you will agree with me that it's going to be fine if this is inside a p tag. So I'll just create a p tag here. I'll say p tag, I'll say p tag, then I'll put those random text in the p tag. I think this is neater, or this is better, at least more structured, better structured than the first one. Then let's create another tag. We can call this h2, and I can say academic background. Then I'll come here again and put another p tag. Then inside this p tag, I'll put another lorem. Then let's come again and do work experience. Work experience. So create this. Oh, sorry. Keep tag. So we can go to the screen and check it out. You have a result that looks like this. You have a result that looks like this. What we can now do is this. We can structure our code even better. This is it. This academic background and this Peter, we know they are together. So we can keep the two of them inside a single container. These two, since they are together, these two are also together. This composition and this text, they are also together. We can keep them inside a single container so that whenever we want to talk about myself, I know I come here to that container. Whenever I want to talk about academic background, instantly we're going to go to the container that contains both this and this. Then whenever I want to talk about work experience, we go to the container that contains both this and this. So we can just say, cut all this, create something like a div. Remember, a div is a block element container. Just cut all of this and put it inside this div. This makes it better structured, just to structure things better. So you know that once you want to talk about the heading, I mean about yourself now, this is it. Then once you want to talk about academic background, then you can come to this div also, create a div. So I will cut all of this. And put it here. So I put it here. So once I want to talk about academic background, I know that is inside this div. And once I want to talk about work experience, I can cut this also and put the two of them inside the div. This is just to structure our page better. This is to structure our page better, just to structure things better. And we can give each of these div ID. We can give this ID. We can say brief info, brief underscore info. So we can give this an ID also and say you are academic. Then I can call this you are work. So meaning that when we want to add anything to the work experience or to anything about work, we know it's going to be within this div. Once we want to talk about academics, we know that will be within this div. And I want to talk about briefly about myself. I know that is within this div. This is just to structure things. We have the div, we have the span. A div, and also when you get to CSS also, we're going to be using these things very well. This div and the span. But just note that a div is a block element container. A span is an inline element container, meaning a span is going to allow you to share, or it shares its line with other elements, while a div will never share its line with other elements, well, except maybe you adjust it with CSS. But note that a div is a block element, while a span is an inline element. So our download has been completed. So let's upload the video on the page. So we've downloaded a video. I will copy this now. Show me further. I can just copy, then go straight to where we have our codes. So I can create a folder and I call it videos, so that will structure our application and make things better. I can call it videos, so I put it inside these videos. Paste. So we've copied the video into this videos folder. So like I said earlier, you're going to link it the exact way you linked the IMG. So you're going to say go to videos folder. Is it video or videos? No, not this. I'm coming. Where are we presently? I'm coming. Okay, we're going to say open this videos folder. So it's going to be videos, not video. It should be videos slash the name of the video. I think it's banana dot. Let's check the extension, whether it's capital letter or small letter. That's important. MP4. Okay, everything is in lowercase. So banana.mp4. This is where the video is located. So this is going to this. When we get to the browser now, we see it on the screen. So here is the video. Now the question is, well, this looks like an image. It's more like a picture than a video. What's going on? So we're going to add something called contours. The contours now, we now display the contour for this. Can we see the contour? We can play it. We can make it full screen. We can do other things. Maybe download. I think this should be download now. Okay, playback speed, picture in pictures. Yeah. So this allows the controls is going to allow you to be able to do all of this. But if you don't have this console, you won't be able to do all of this. You won't be able to even pause it. Then another thing you can do is, if you don't want to add consoles, you can do something called autoplay. Autoplay means immediately you get to the page, it will start playing itself. Instantly, if you just start playing itself, but you can't control it. Autoplay is not working. What's going on? Okay, I'll check why autoplay is not working. I expect it to work immediately you get to the page. That's work of autoplay. Once you get to the page, the video should start playing itself. But the problem is, if you don't add consoles, you won't be able to pause it. It will just be playing, but you won't be able to pause the video. So it works the same way with the audio also. You can add the consoles and you can also add the autoplay to both videos and audio tag. I'll check the autoplay and see what's going on, then get back to us in our next class so that we can discuss it. So any questions so far? Hello senior devs. Hello developers. Can we hear me? Do you understand all I've discussed?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So let's summarize and have our assignments for tonight. Then our next class will be on Thursday. That will be our last class on HTML before we move to the next thing. So let's have a summary. We looked at some of these tags. We looked at the form, and inside the form we looked at the action which said the URL we are submitting to. We looked at the method which is, at least for now, we said we're going to be using either get or post. Get should not be used to submit password. Then inside an input, in an input tag, we look at the name attribute. That's what the server side uses to recognize the input, the content of that form. Then we looked at ID, and we said we're going to be using the ID with the for part of label. This part with the for. We're going to be using the ID with the for. Then we looked at input type submit. We use that to submit a form. Then we looked at this input type email. Oh, thank you. Before we go, there are some input types that are very important that we omitted. We have input type radio and input type checkbox. Let's look at what these two, what they do. Input type radio and input type checkbox. So let's see what happens to this. If I say input type radio, let's see what happens on the screen. I will comment out everything so that we just focus on the input type radio and the input type checkbox. So I think it's input type radio. So I'll say gender and let's say gender. So I'll just put, instead of putting gender, I'll put male. Then female. So let's see how this works. We have this male, female. If I select female, it will uncheck male. If I pick male, it will uncheck female. We use input type radio to select one out of multiple options. Note that these two must have the same name, and that's why the name here is the same as the name here. That means I can only select one out of anything with the same name. I can only select one. Let's say I added another one. Let's not use gender. Let's say programming language, and let's say Python input type radio, and I say language. Just call it lang. Just copy. Then here, let's say call it JavaScript, and let's say this is PHP. So since they have the same name, a user can only choose one out of these three. Since they have the same name attributes, and that's what you use input type radio for. Once I select one, it will unselect the others. You can only select one. That is input type radio. Another is input type checkbox. Input type checkbox. In this case, you can select multiple items from this list. They still have the same name, but you can select multiple items. What this name is just meant for is to group them together as a single entity when you're about to submit the form. At the end of the day, we're going to lift this input from this place and make them in the form. So it's going to group them together while attempting to submit this form. It's going to group them together so that it knows that, oh, these are the programming languages you should know. You can select more than one. But if it was to be radio, you can only select one out of the list. For checkbox, you can select many. So I can select this. Also select this. In fact, I can select the three if I want to, and I can unselect anyone. So that is input type checkbox. So radio allows you to choose one. Checkbox allows you to choose many. So I will now take them out of this place and make them to my form. So let's comment the form. I can just say gender label for gender, input type radio, name is gender. Oh, sorry, I will change it. Just copy this and paste. So So this place will be labeled for female. Then female, female. So we have this. This is the male input. Once you click on this, of course, it's going to use the ID, but note that these two must have the same name so that the user will be able to choose just one out of the two. If you are using input type radio, let's run it on the page and see. We have this male, female. Let me break this to the next line. Male, female. Maybe since they are together, maybe I want them to be on the same line. I may not necessarily put this break. So I will remove this break. So we have this now. So if I select the first one and I choose the second one, it will unselect it. So that is input type radio. So we should know when to use input type radio and when to use input type check box. Then another thing is select tag. You can also use select tag. A select tag is going to create something like a drop down for you. It's going to create something like a drop down. Let's say I want to select a programming language I want to use. So I can say so we have a select tag. Inside this select, you can choose one. This will allow you to just choose one. You can. It's something similar to your input type radio. That is, you can only choose one out of the many things there. You can only choose one out of the many things there. So let's look at it. Let's run it on the browser and see how it works. You can only choose one out of the many. But maybe you also want it to work like the input type checkbox. So I can say multiple. Just say the multiple attribute. This will work like the input type checkbox, meaning that you'll be able to select many. So now I can select many. Select many. Select menu. So you can use select tag also if you want to, depending on how you want to display it on your screen. So you can use select or you can use input type, either radio or checkbox. Select multiple will allow you to choose multiple many, while if you just have select, you can only choose one at a time. So I think we've come to the end of this thing. The only thing we are here to look at is table, and I intentionally decided not to bring it up today because table is something that we need to focus on separately, understand how it works, then give us tags on it. That's why I decided to leave out table today. So in our next class, we're going to be looking at the table tag, and after that we'll do a quick revision of all the tags we've considered. Note, you can't state all the tags in class, but as time goes on, these are the most important ones and the ones we're going to be using often. These are the ones we'll be using often. And with these tags, the ones we've treated and the one we're going to state in our next class, which is table, you'll be able to do a lot of things, a lot. But as time goes on, as you work more, you will get used to other tags aside these ones. Any question before we call it a day and before I give us an assignment to do? Question time, question time, question time, question time, question time.
No question.
Okay, assignments. So back to the assignments I gave us in our last class. In our last assignment, we added an image to the page to the screen. We what's it called? We added this part also. Fill this information. Please change that contact form. This contact where you ask the user to supply their information. Change it to a form. Change it to a form. Then make the email required, meaning that the users must fill the email address before submitting that form. Then tell them to choose the agenda. You want to know their gender, so I don't know what you're going to use. Or just tell them to fill the agenda, meaning they will select between male and female. Then, okay, add a video to your page. Maybe a brief. The video can just be a brief info about yourself, or I don't. Just add a video to your page so that users can view videos on your page. Display a video on your page. So, what else did we look at today? Okay, that's all. Make the email compulsory. That the email must be filled. Add an image, add a video to your page. Like you can just record a short video, maybe about yourself, and put it on the page. Then I want us to know something now. I realized that some of us, while trying to submit the assignment, maybe you try to send the video and or sorry the image. Some of you tried sending the image. Truthfully, you won't be able to because the image is on your device. This is what you're going to do next time. You can zip it and send it to my mail. You can zip it. Let's say if I want to send this whole thing to you, remember everything is inside this folder. So you can right click on it and zip. Compress it. You can compress it. Use this compress. So once you compress it, it's going to zip it for you. Then you can now send me the zip version. So with that, I will have access to all your images and your files. Do you understand? You can zip the video, I mean the folder. You can zip the folder, then send the zipped version to me. With that, I will unzip it at my end, and you can have access to all the so, like I said, some of us tried sending the images to me, but I won't be able to use them to view them. So what you can do is this: zip the folder, right click and zip, compress a mail or do this. Just zip it. After zipping it, then you can forward it to me. Any question? Question. Lots of questions. We'll meet on Thursday. Thank you very much. Please be prepared to round off on HTML.
Mr. Time,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Time,
Yes, sir.
please, are you going to take the recording, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, good. I was a little bit obstructed at the point.
Okay. Please,
Thank you.
you get to round off HTML on Thursday. We are going to Git. We are adjusting our curriculum a bit. We are going to be doing Git before CSS, and that's because I want to, instead of sending these things to me via mail, with Git now we'll be uploading our page on Git pages. We'll be uploading our codes online, so you can just send the URL to people. Do you understand? You can just send the URL to people, and also I want us to quickly build our portfolio, so that will make all of that possible with Git. So after HTML, we are going to do Git. I'll still be the one to take us Git. But once I'm done with Git, another instructor will be the one to take us for the remaining part of this stage. So I'll take us HTML and Git. Another instructor will take us CSS and Bootstrap. So next week we start Git, but on Thursday we conclude HTML. Thank you very much. Let me stop recording.